I want to thank the CSL music team and Joanne Bewald for reading today. We're on week 3 of our 12-week series on Chop Wood, Carry Water, which is a book by Rick Fields. But each week is independent, so today we're talking about something that we all have in our lives, relationships. You know, relationships seem to be the most joyful as well as the most challenging parts of our lives. So these 2 chapters this week give us a lot of insights about the joys and the challenges. But let's begin with our question of the week. What is the one choice you can make today to accept the interconnectedness of all things, to know you define the quality of your relationships, and to discover your own spirituality through your relationships? One more time. What is the one choice that you can make today to accept the interconnectedness of all things, to know you define the quality of your relationships, and to discover your own spirituality through your relationships? Like it or not, what our philosophy tells us about oneness is true. We're all interconnected. And our seeking to be in a relationship with others is the outpicturing of that interconnectedness. As you heard in the reading, life is a relationship, and we are all in a perfect relationship with everything that makes up our lives at this very moment. To feel this interconnectedness with all things and to know that we are part of the universe is one of the great joys of the spiritual life. And it is our intimate relationships that provide the greatest opportunity to learn this lesson. I know I don't always feel in perfect relationship with everything in my life. And we do learn the lesson of being a part of a universe through our relationship highs and lows. Rick Field was absolutely accurate when he says that relationships are the great challenge of life. He does speak of the 2 cornerstone ideas related to relationships that show up in most spiritual writings. And the first one, of course, is oneness. We're intertwined on our common journey on this earth. The second is individually, we are whole, perfect, and complete. All we need is already in us, right here, right now. So where's the challenge in that? As I see it, sure, I know we're intertwined. I even know that when I'm willing to open my heart and send out love to someone, that at some level they receive it. Yet, letting go of my identity and my ideas and my understanding of the oneness is not something that I find easy to live 24/7. I know who I am, how I show up in the world, what it is that makes me joyous and peaceful and calm. And that's not necessarily what makes some other human feel the same way. So it's a paradox that we walk on this planet as separate entities and also naturally seek to be in relationship with others to feel complete. Fields calls this interpersonal fusion. It's an interesting term. We seek to be in a relationship, to be in families and clans, and actually most of us are uncomfortable being alone for long periods of time. It probably explains why teenagers are so prone to peer approval, and most likely why the pandemic was so difficult on so many people. We seek connection, even as we seek to define our interconnectedness. Anne Morrow Lindbergh wrote this: "For we are actually pioneers trying to find a new path through the maze of tradition, convention, and dogma. Our efforts are part of the struggle to mature the conception of relationships between men and women. In fact, all relationships. In such a life, every advancing understanding has value. Every step, even a tentative one, counts. And while seeking connection, we also find our relationships to be challenging. There was a saint who was visiting a river to take a bath, and he found a group of family members on the banks, and they were shouting in anger at each other. He turned to the disciples, smiled, and asked, "Why do people shout in anger at each other?" The disciples thought about it for a while, and one of them said, "Because we lose our calm, we shout." "But why should you shout when the other person is standing right next to you? You can as well tell him what you have to say in a soft manner," said the saint. The disciples gave some other answers, but none really were satisfying. And finally, the saint explained this. When two people are angry at each other, their hearts distance a lot. And to cover that distance, they must shout to be able to hear each other. The angrier they are, the stronger they have to shout to hear each other to cover that great distance. You notice when people fall in love, said the saint, that they don't shout at each other. They talk softly because their hearts are very close. The distance between them is very small, possibly even non-existent. And the saint continued, when they love each other even more, what happens? They don't even speak, or perhaps they speak in a whisper as they get closer to each other in love. And finally, they don't even need to whisper. They can just look at each other, and that's all that's needed. So when two people are close and when they're in love, there's no shouting. So he said to his disciples, so when you argue, don't let your hearts get distant. Don't say words that distance each other even more, or else there'll come a day when the distance is so great that you can't find the path to return. One thing our reading made clear today is that there are many ways that we're in relationships with each other and with the divine. And while Fields talks a lot about couple relationships, what each of us know at some level of our being is that our relationship with ourself is what truly defines our joy and the sadness that we find. Relationships cannot thrive if our relationship with ourself is not thriving. It seems like knowing that we define the quality of our relationships is a bit of both a blessing and a curse, right? I was at the CSL convention this week. It was wonderful. I had a great time. I learned a lot. And there were people there from all over the globe. And Chris Michaels, author of Your Soul's Assignment, was a speaker. He talked about growing up in the generation of born to be wild. I know that generation, flower children, groupies. We were a creative group who knew what we wanted, and we went for it. It didn't mean it was always right or even easy. Yet we had great passion behind what we desired. And as the song of the time went, we were born free. Personally, I never mastered being as free as the wind blows or as free as the grass grows, but I do believe that I learned to follow my heart. In Michael's talk, he asked what the generation would look like if instead of being born to be wild, we were born to be mild. If that were our theme, when we had our dreams and we lined things out and there were things that we were passionate about, we'd just throw them out in favor of being mild, of not rocking the boat. So think about what you want in life right now. Do you go for it, or do you throw it away? Are you born to be wild or mild? That's a really great question with our dreams and with our relationships. There's a Zen quote: if you walk, just walk. If you sit, just sit. But whatever you do, don't wobble. The advice from that saying is actually sound and quite simple to understand, yet it's difficult to put in practice. What makes us wobble? Distractions from being our true self. We're constantly being pulled in thousands of different directions, often with our focus going by the wayside. The theme of our conference this year was Embrace the Now. Embrace the now. Not only is it important to be present in the moment when you do something, but it's also important that you zone in as much as you can, that you embrace that now moment. You empty your mind of the past and of the future and merely think about what is being done right here and right now. If it's time to work, work. If it's time to rest, rest. Imagine if we could develop that monk-like focus and eliminate distractions that cause us to wobble. Do you think we would learn to give weight to our intentions and do exactly what we know we've come here to do and to be? There was another speaker who offered this Zen quote: know that when you put your foot out, the road moves up to meet it. So be born to be wild. Put your foot out there. Be wild, not mild. And know that the road is going to move up to meet it. You know, there's that saying in our philosophy that when we go for something, the whole entire universe is behind us, that God is always for us. That's what it means to be wild about our dreams. And another important aspect of relationships is that they really do allow us to discover our own spirituality. You know, we're here in these human forms, and so we see God through other humans. If we look at the term spirituality, connect it to things of the spirit, then of course our relationships are spiritual in nature. And it makes sense for us to take the advice of Zen Master John Buxhausen, a former Zen monk, who recommends that we make our couple relationships part of our spiritual practice. And I don't think he's talking just about couple relationships. I think he's talking really about all of our relationships. Here's what he says. In practical terms, this means learning to identify and mutually solve problems as they arise, rather than avoiding them or discounting their significance. At the conference, I went to this great session called From Conflict to Connection. And I want to share just a little bit about it because the process is really helpful in solving problems in our relationships so that we can stay in spiritual alignment. Before you start the process, though, there's something that you need to do. You need to think of a place or something that makes you happy and joyful. Now, they recommend it not be a person or a pet because if you're upset with them and you need this process, it won't work. So for me, it's being around the ocean or watching dolphins play in the ocean. So right now, just think of something that makes you joyful and happy. Okay, so set that aside for a minute. When a conflict arises, here's what you do. The first thing you do is become heart-focused, and that just means settling into your heart and focusing on your heart. Focusing on that place within you where love resides. The second thing you do is some heart breathing. Now, sometimes you want to just put your hand over your heart and just feel the heartbeat. Just allow yourself to feel your heart beating. And the third step is to go into that heart of appreciation. And here's when you bring to mind that thing that you just remembered that brings you joy and happiness. So think about that thing right now. And when you're in that state, you ask the divine this question: what is it that I need to know? And when you get an answer, be willing to act on it. I invite you to try that the next time you're trying to resolve a conflict, or the next time you feel like shouting. Oh, and by the way, if you begin any remarks or feedback that you have for your partner or friend by thinking, not necessarily saying out loud, I'd rather be happy than right now, it's a lot easier. Sometimes we get so stuck in wanting to be right that we let go of our happiness and our joy. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said this: love does not consist in gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. And Plato wrote that love is the pursuit of the whole. Are those things not what we say in our philosophy? When we're willing to resolve conflicts in our relationships and look outward together in the same direction to see each other as whole, those conflicts fall by the wayside. So how do you see wholeness in yourself or in someone else? Because if we can't see it in ourselves, we're not going to be able to see it in someone else. Part of this information on relationships is about recognizing that the most important relationship you have in your life is the one that you have with yourself. If you can't see yourself as well, if you can't accept the wholeness of who you are, then you're not loving yourself. And you can't give someone else love or peace or calm or joy if you don't have it within yourself. Fields wrote that over and over, the Dalai Lama emphasized the practice of altruism. And the Dalai Lama told us this: the purpose of life is to increase the warm heart. Think of other people. Serve other people sincerely. No cheating. If you can, help others. If you cannot do that, at least do not harm them. And this applies to yourself as well as others. If you find yourself feeling less than on any level, help yourself. That might mean writing an affirmation. It might mean engaging in some practitioner session or in a meditation. It might even mean calling a friend and just having a conversation about it. And if you can't do one of those things, at least take the Dalai Lama's advice and do no harm to yourself. In other words, do the best that you can do and let it go. Let go of that feeling. Don't wallow in it. And don't wobble in your spiritual practice around your relationship with your inner true self. So a little boy and girl were playing together, and the boy had his collection of marbles, and the little girl had several sweets with her. The boy told the little girl that he would give him all the marbles in exchange for her sweets. And so the little girl decided to agree. Now, while the little girl wasn't looking, the boy kept the biggest and the most beautiful marble, and he set it aside, and he gave all the rest of them to the little girl. The little girl, however, gave all of her sweets just as she had agreed. And that night, the little girl slept peacefully. Guess what? The little boy wasn't sleeping quite so good because he was wondering if the little girl had hidden the best sweet from him the way he had hidden his best marble. You know, when we don't give 100% in a relationship, you always keep doubting if the other person is giving their 100%. And it doesn't matter if it's a love relationship, a friendship, an employer-employee relationship. We have to give 100% of who we are if we want to sleep peacefully. Erich Fromm, a German social psychologist, psychoanalyst, sociologist, humanistic philosopher, and democratic socialist, and also the author of The Art of Loving, wrote this: "Love is not primarily a relationship to a specific person. It is an attitude, an orientation of character, which determines the relatedness of the person to the world as a whole, not toward one object of love. If I truly love one person, I love all persons. I love the world. I love life. If I can say to somebody else, I love you, I must be able to say, I love in you everybody. I love through you the world. I love in you also myself." And therapist Brooks Bosson counts on his clients to do this. Make the relationship an explicit part of their spiritual practice. In practical terms, this means learning to identify and mutually solve problems as they arise, rather than avoiding them or discounting their significance. I love the anonymous quote: "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." So say I love you to yourself and others. Say yes to the flow of possibilities for our spiritual growth through our relationships. And allow resistance to conflict to fall away and learn to connect. So in summary, decide to make your relationships a priority. Accept that we are interconnected. And remember to whisper and have your heart be close to others. Know that you define the quality of your relationships. Ask yourself every once in a while, am I born to be wild or born to be mild? And release those distractions that make you wobble. Discover your spirituality through your relationships. Try the heart focus, heart breathing, and heart appreciation technique to move from conflict to connection. and learn to make the purpose of life to increase the warm heart. So here's your affirmation for the week. How is it that I so easily and willingly make the choice today to accept the interconnectedness of all things, to know I define the quality of my relationships, and to discover my own spirituality through my relationships? And your challenge for the week? Make a conscious choice to embrace the now, to be wild in your living, not mild, and to look outward together with others. Remember the words of Plato: love is the pursuit of the whole. Let's pray. So we just take a deep, nourishing breath. We move into that heart, focusing on all the love that we have to give, being wild about all the love that we have to give, knowing that God is love and that we each are love. What I know to be the truth is that each of us has many types of relationships in our lives, and that we are striving consistently to have those relationships go deeper, to be more meaningful, that we are looking at the world through lenses of acceptance and love and non-judgment. That we're looking out into the world together. So I am grateful, so grateful to have the relationships of this community, to be able to see God and know God through other people. So it's from that gratitude that I just release these words into the law of mind, spirit, and action, knowing the truth that right where we are, God is. Right where we are, love is. And that God has already said yes. So I can just let it be, say amen, and we can affirm it together. And so it is. So I want to take this opportunity to be grateful for all of the donations that are being sent in one form or another, and to recognize that that is allowing us to search for a place, possibly even to do just one service a month as a hybrid where people can come and we can also broadcast it. So there's many things in the fire right now, and I hope that you will be wild about supporting them with your time, with your talents, with your treasures. Thank you. Enjoy the offertory song.